But when you start InDesign, you should have probably the work and learn option. Just make sure you're clicked on the work option here on the top. And then on the very far left, you have two separate options, the create new option and the open option. So because we are starting to create a new document, we are going to select the first option. So let's hit create new and see what is InDesign asking of us to do here. So what we're going to pay attention to is this part on the far right. We have to give directions on what exactly we're wanting from this project or from this software. Now, the first thing that we are going to change is under the preset details. So I'm in this section right here for preset details. Under units, we will change picas into inches. It's very difficult to work in picas, so we all know how inches look, and it's just going to be so much easier to work in inches. Now, after we selected inches, the width of our document is going to be 8.5 inches, while the height is going to be 11 inches. Now, one very important detail, under orientation, make sure you're clicked on portrait and not landscape. So landscape is going to give your document horizontally, while the newsletter should look like a letter size and you should be placed in portrait menu. Under pages number, type in number 2 because your newsletter, the project for this class, is going to be a 2-page long newsletter. And I will have a specific video on this project and what exactly it should contain. But for now, just remember have 2 pages for the document. Unselect the facing pages. So if yours is selected by default, unselect it. Okay? Start on page 1, which is what we're gonna leave it to that. Let's scroll down and let's move on to the columns, gutter, and margin section. So under the columns section, type in number 3 because we want our text to be spread into 3 columns, and we will need these 3 columns whenever we start working with a body copy. Under the column gutter, just leave this number by default. If you have a different number, take notes and remember that the gutter spacing should be 0.1667 inches. Now, what is the gutter? The gutter is the spacing between the columns, and that spacing is extremely important. Probably about 100 or 200 years ago, when newspapers were just kind of taking space within the market, the gutter was not present. They would use rulers between columns. And now we have the gutter because it adds a little bit of white space and it makes things look so much better. Okay, now let's move on to margins. Under margins, you can either leave the 0.5 inches, so you know about a quarter of an inch from the edge of a page, it doesn't get printed. But because we know it's a quarter and it's not 0.5, I'm just gonna type in 0.25 inches. And I'll link this option right here so that all my margins are linked together and they all become 0.25 together. We're not going to touch the bleed and slug, we don't need it for now, and we'll hit create. So now that we hit create, we're actually done with about 10% of our project. Now what you see right here is what we told the software to do. So you see 2 pages, which is what we asked InDesign to do. Then you see 3 columns for these two pages. You see spacing between the columns, which is the gutter. And you see the size of this page, 8.5 by 11 vertically. So yep, we're done with the first step. Now, after you're done with this step, you have to save this. Remember, make sure you save this first draft of your document because you will need it. And if you don't save it and you lose it, you'll have to go back and go through the same exact steps that I just showed you. So let's save it together and let's place it in a folder. Remember, it's extremely important when we work with Adobe software to have that folder that contains every element that goes onto our document, just to make sure things link together and we don't have any broken links. So let's save the document. We'll do File, scroll down to save as, and then under save as, I'm gonna name it newsletter. I will place it on my desktop for now, and I'll hit save. Now I'm going to minimize my InDesign software. I'll go on my desktop, I'll do right click, and I'll do new folder. And here I'm gonna name this folder newsletter project. Okay,